So it has many own attributes, own fields, and it has own classes and methods and constructors and so on and so forth. But we didn't think about the second object, how it's built, but how the constructor build, how the method build, how can you can access from this object to the other object or this class to the other class, and this is the idea to build it, to discuss with you. So that means, as I already said, every object has three characters, like it has states, that means representative value, and data. It has behaviors, meaning that it has own methods, and it has identity. Every object has own identity. That's the meaning of object. If you try to create object out of one class, that is its class, and then there is a three characteristics. This is really clearly defined, like it has a state of the object, it has its own behaviors of the object, and then it has the identity for the JVM to uniquely identify the object into the JVM in the memory allocation, in memory levels. So that means object definition, object is real entity, like the real entity means the plot information is a real entity. It has a runtime entity, it has own states, it has own behaviors, and it has maintained the object is instance of classes. That means this is the five characters. Real world entity, like plot information, it has a runtime entity. That's true in the JVM and JRE, and then the entity has state and behaviors, and also the object is the instance of the class. That's the five character of any objects when you try to create any object out of the specific class. So object containing, that's how we already said, it fields, methods, constructor, block, nested classes, and then interfaces. Interfaces, this object definitions. So let's have a talk to the constructor, how the constructor is built, and how you can initialize the object and classes with the initialization with the methods on constructor, and that there is a different way of constructing, building the objects, and initializing the objects. That's the idea we need to discuss. We will discuss together. So we try to build now. So objects, so it has a constructor, so you have a objects, the constructor, that's you already know, one sort of methods, but this has no specific return type. This is the default constructor. You see the public, the plot, this is the plot information constructor. It has no argument on. This is the, you can say, default constructor. If you don't define any constructor of your class, that means the compiler automatically create the default constructor. That means this is the no argument constructor. That means default constructor. There is no argument. You have a parameterized constructor. How can you define? Let's say you have a parameter like is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, including 8 parameters. That's that you can combine the different parameters. So that means one constructor, if you see the first constructor, line number 17, you see the only constructing the building info with only ID and address ID. That means this is our only first constructor you can build with the address ID and then address ID. That's, you can see in the down level when you initial build the objects, you see this is the object in the constructor, so it has ID and it has address ID. So you build create the object and initialize its values with the constructor, and this is one of the another constructor. You see there's address ID. Maybe let's see that this constructor, you see it has ID, it has address ID, it has a plot ID, it has a code. And then if you look for this the constructor, you see exactly it has the ID, it has the address ID, it has a plot ID, it has that code of the buildings, and this is the constructor. So that means if you have two type of constructor, no argument constructor, because you cannot pass. This is the default constructor. It has a many combination of your constructor. Like constructor means like civil construction works. If you try to build one building rooms, and then you need to be build the walls, like you need to build the doors, and you need to build the window. This means how the object will be built. You can build with the constructor. That's the meaning of the constructor, how is built on. So if you have the second constructor, you have as a 1 2 3 4 4 4 parameters, and it has see that there's a different combination of constructors. It's ID, it is a code, it has a name, and it's type. So it's there is a many combination of the your constructor. That's I mean. So that means if you have a really, like, if you see that this is all constructed, all the eight fields is constructing the your plot information object. So it has all the information that we have defined it here, the attribute per fields, and then ID, address ID, plot ID, code, name, type, and the remark, and the building information. That's I mean everything is constructed with. If you build this object, then you need to build fit everything. You need to give it to them the every constructor. So that means this you can get the clear idea, and that the constructor means how many fields you have. It depending on how the combination you try to build, how you try to construct the object. If you have 10 fields, or if you have 5 fields, then you can maximum 5 field with the to construct the object, or maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, maximum 5 any combination you can build your objects as a constructor. So if you see, look, this the code. There is an example. This I think I will discuss it a bit later. What are the keyword this, and then super, and then this the keyword we need to discuss a little bit later part. But you can see that here when you use the previous constructor, or your default constructor, previous constructor, like this is using this the constructor. You can also, this keyword can use as a constructor, so it's calling your super constructor. If you're calling this constructor inside the other constructor, this is the first word you need to be put it this, and then it's ID, and then the address ID, because this is the constructor already defined in the above level, the line number 17, and then you call the previous constructor. So that means you don't need to write down again the this dot ID, this dot address ID. You don't need it because already defined the previous constructor. So this is the keyword this used in here, the reusing the constructor. That means this is the previous one constructor. You can reuse that one. So the reusing the constructor meanings that this and super keyword I will discuss a little bit later. You need to be really fast, very fast arguments, not the statements, not the if you like that way, if you just like block it. If you put it like this dot the last arguments or somewhere, then it has a compilation error, because it doesn't work. That's we expected. So every time when you reuse the constructor, then you need to use the very fast statement for the previous constructor, the existing constructor. So this is the constructor. You see the different combinations, and it has all the fields that you define it here with the complex objects. And complex object means this is the buildings object, also the part of the constructor. When you build this object, you need to be passed up with building object also with together. And you see the constructor, you can also you can pass the copy of constructor. So you can pass all the object itself as a constructor is in the arguments. You can pass all the arguments and build your constructor. That means when you build this object, you can also copy this object as another object. So if you have the example like this way, so we build the constructor objects. You see we build we build very simple objects, and then we just bypass we initialize this is the part I will discuss later. The methods, we insert the values, and we just fill the another objects like the copy constructor objects, and then we pass the object that we already the initialized, and create and initialize with the methods, and then you see the copy directly the constructor methods to the other objects. So if you have a constructor object, you build a constructor and you pass the object itself into your your constructed objects.